one of the paradoxes is that we've seen organizations that are massively interested in the opportunity to use artificial intelligence to dramatically accelerate workflows. And that's something where in the ERP world, there are some workflows that are highly standardized where you can make a lot of progress very quickly. But then there are also a whole series of customer scenarios where clients have got particular demands, where vendors may not have the deep industry expertise that their customers would like them to have.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our #1 priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. And this is the segment where we analyze one of the juiciest stories from previous months. And we have a panel of one of the most outstanding analysts that go wild or grumpy, however you want to put it. So we are going to have a lot of fun discussing, all of these stories. Before we do that, we are going to start with quick intros of everybody. Sam Gupta, principal at ElevateIQ. ElevateIQ is the analyst and advisory firm. On that note, let's go with John. John, do you want to introduce?
Hey, John Santaferraro here, CEO and head research analyst at Ferraro Consulting, a firm that does industry analytics services as well as marketing strategy. Been in this data and analytics industry for 30 years now.
Amazing. Thank you so much, John, for that. Ken Gon, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So my name's Ken Gonzalez. I'm with the Pretty Simple Group, independent analyst and advisory firm. And I've been in the business about 40 years, and I promise I'm going to start counting right there.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here, Ken Gon. Brian?
Yeah, thank you, Sam. I'm with Infotech Research Group. I'm a principal research director there. I focus on tech trends. I just published the CIO Priorities Report, came out recently. I've been at Infotech for 5 years.
Amazing. Duncan?
I'm Duncan Chappell. I've got a few different hats in my professional life at the moment. I run industry analyst relations for Elisa Polystar and Elisa Industric. And I also run a research center at the University of Edinburgh called the Analyst Observatory that tracks the impact of industry analyst insight on enterprise buyers.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Duncan. And I'm going to miss my partner, Robert, today. So I am going to have to do a lot more heavy lifting, which is not my first preference. I like to be lazy. But in the audience, we generally like to see a lot of comments from your side. We are a big fan of creating this three-way conversation, even though you are not part of the panel. You are part of the panel. So bring your stories, comments, whatever you can bring, and we will be discussing those as we make progress with the show. So I'm going to jump right in, guys, and on the first story. So here, and I don't know if anybody from this room was here last, but we did cover Unit 4 just a little bit. John, were you there?
Yeah, I was there last week.
Yeah, you were there. So this is a similar story, but different, organization. So we have some more details. So we'll touch briefly on that. So this is the CEO transition story, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with Unit 4. They are one of the largest ERP vendor. Most people from Europe are probably going to be familiar with them because it's a far more prominent brand in Europe, and they have had very similar transition in the cloud. So now, after 4 or 5 years of dramatic economy, I guess they are changing the CEO. That could be the reason, I guess. So that's what is happening with this story. So I'm going to open up the floor. I don't know if anybody's going to have comments. We don't necessarily take turns here. So
I mean, I'd be happy to chip in with just some general thoughts about the difficult situation that the ERP market is in. And I think it's no surprise that a number of ERP vendors are disappointing investors at the moment in a very uneven market. I think one of the paradoxes is that we've seen organizations that are massively interested in the opportunity to use artificial intelligence to dramatically accelerate workflows. And that's something where in the ERP world, there are some workflows that are highly standardized where you can make a lot of progress very quickly. But then there are also a whole series of customer scenarios where clients have got particular demands, where vendors may not have the deep industry expertise that their customers would like them to have. And that means that their revenue growth is being challenged, and instead other players in the market are accelerating. So I think generally we're seeing that many of the cloud providers are accelerating in a way that some of the traditional software application vendors like Unit4 have not been able to accelerate at the same growth rate.
Yeah, more comments. If I don't hear anything in next 10 seconds, I'm going to provide some more context on the story, and then I'll see if you guys have any thoughts.
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick because I guess to me it was more interesting that not that Ettling was leaving, but that Simon Paris was coming in.
Yeah,
and especially because he's got great CEO experience from what I can see, but he also has experience at SAP. So he knows the ERP business, and there he was the head of the industry cloud. And so he really understands two things that I think could be important for Unit4. One, cloud, and number two, being able to go to market by industry. And especially as we move into the AI age, we have the large language models that are developed, where people are developing these agents, but we also have the smaller, more specific industry models that are going to be really important to move forward. So it'll be interesting to watch him leverage that and see if that opens some doors for Unit4.
Okay, so guys, I'm going to provide some more context here. So I guess, John, we discussed last time that Simon Paris, even though he has SAP and Infor background, he seems to have a lot more manufacturing background. This is going to be slightly more service-centric ERP. So in this case, your HCM background is going to matter a lot more. In this case, Mike Ettling probably had that background a lot more. But I think the reason why they have shifted is all because of the private equity move, because they generally like to have a CEO who has done scaling at that revenue band. I mean, that's how they like to see it, right? So most likely, I mean, that's probably the reason for this move. But in this particular story, one comment that is very interesting is the reason the RP industry exists is because of bad ERP data. And this is how ERP industry thinks. And I don't know if you guys are going to have any sort of counter for that. That could be partially true. But that is something, I don't know if RPA community is going to agree with that. So anybody has any comment on that by any chance?
I mean, only that it's obviously a joke, right? Like there's a seed of truth in every joke, and certainly RPA it can help us when we can't quite patch our software together or our ERP solutions together and have them automate things the way we want. Yes, maybe that can step in and fill the role for us. But let's face it, there's lots of times when you just need text from a form copied from one place to another, and there's no ERP solution that's going to handle that type of automation, right? It's just a fundamentally different sort of function. So it's funny, but it's not entirely true.
Anybody else? No? If not, I'll move to the next story. So I'll give you guys background on this story. So Overhaul, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this company. They are primarily in the supply chain space. In supply chain space, and again, I don't know how much background you guys have in the supply chain space. There are many different companies, okay? John, I think we were doing back and forth on LinkedIn yesterday in terms of AI. There are a lot of different AI and analytics company, but their intent is going to be that they are providing network. They are also providing analytics on top of that. These companies are not necessarily in the execution space, which is going to be transactional space, the operational space, the whole ERP, in WMS or supply chain suite as well, you have a little bit of execution component, which is going to be your WMS, TMSs of the world. So Overhaul, I would say they are more into the whole visibility space, which would fall under data analytics, pre-baked analytics for supply chain. Their secret sauce, I would say, was one of the things that they were handling, which is cargo theft, which is very unique, business case from the supply chain perspective, and they are really deep into that. So that's the story, and obviously they have raised some money here. So I'll provide some more context, but I want to open up the floor first for you guys. If you guys have any sort of comments.
I'm just interested here on the focus on supply chain security. It's clear to me that the money that they've raised will have to be invested towards other areas beyond that, because $55 million here. The data I'm looking up, for example, CargoNet reporting that in 2023 there were $130 million worth of stolen goods reported
Yeah.
in the supply chain. So it's just like, it's not adding up to me that that's going to be the main, most compelling part of this funding that they can apply. So I hope that they can, find other ways to enhance that customer value. And they do say here, of course, they're planning to use this maybe for their own acquisitions. So we'll see, how they sort of expand their portfolio.
Yeah, I think I can imagine that one of the other use cases that they might be thinking about is traceability. It's a real problem in a whole series of industries, that their ability to trace components, and especially to understand, even at quite late stages in the production process, where a component might have ended up. That can be very hard without being able to have a good visibility and a good, the real ability to analyze data, tracking where various components and raw materials have come from. So I could see this could be an interesting area. But honestly, it's fascinating to think that the market might be that small. Immediately, I wonder whether there's a lot of theft that simply isn't being reported because nobody wants to report their theft or their shortage in a way that their investors are going to pick up on it.
Yeah, so guys, if you guys don't have any other comments, I'll provide some more context. So I don't know how much you guys track the supply chain space. Overhaul, to your comment, Brian, is a very small piece in the supply chain suite space. So when we look at supply chain suite, especially the enterprise ones, those are going to be Blue Yonder, E2Opens of the world. They are going to have a lot more capabilities. And the recent acquisition, I don't know, if it has been even 6 months now. Okay, Blue Yonder had acquired a company called One Network Enterprises, which had very similar offering as this. So this is a game of data as well as geography. So each of the geography is going to have very unique data as well as modes. So all of these companies, the smaller ones, have very subset of that data that they are going to have subject matter expertise in. And when you combine all of that, that's when you become much bigger, supply chain suite. And that's what is going to be Blue Yonder as well as E2Opens of the world. So overall, from the product perspective, I guess their representation is very, very small. And I will see from the acquisition perspective, Overhaul is probably going to be acquired by one of those companies, the companies that are really trying to take advantage of this data. So supply chain space itself is very big, and Overhaul is playing a very small role in this particular case. So that's my clarification. More comments, guys.
So you think Overhaul is an acquisition target, even though this money is to help it acquire other firms?
So in the supply chain space, the way this works is, and John would agree with this, right? AI is a game of data, and 90% of the supply chain companies that we are talking about, they have access to very unique data set that other companies are not going to have. And that's why we hear very collaborative partnerships, sometimes even among rivals. We are talking about Oracle SAP partnering, Oracle Microsoft partnering, just to get access to that data. So obviously, I'm not saying they are going to be acquisition target right away, but they are going to be acquired by somebody, I guess. Right now, they just have 350 customers, so which is very small. Most of them are going to be enterprise customers. So that would be my take on their position as well as where they fit.
Yeah, I think I'll add that I think the timing is good for them to get this money, because they either have to acquire AI capabilities or they have to build them very quickly, because it doesn't appear to me that they have a lot of that. Now, given that the fact that they're already doing supply chain observability, it means they have the right data, and so their barrier to entry to be able to achieve something with AI or even agentic AI, which would help them not only discover the fraud and the theft that is happening, but actually potentially do something about it. That I think is good, and the it's a very fast growing market, according to the firm that they at least that TechCrunch quoted in this article, Business Research Insights. It's going to grow at a CAGR of 26.45%. So that means it just seems like really good timing, a good opportunity for them.
Yeah, I think I'd also just quickly add that any use case for AI-driven predictive analytics is going to be interesting. If they can make this, if they can make their technology work, and obviously it must be working because they're working with Microsoft and Dyson and a whole pile of other firms, they're able to get it work. Then being able to activate other use cases in the supply chain, simply balancing inventory, for example, that could be a fantastic opportunity for them or for an investor and acquirer.
Okay, if you guys don't have any comments, we can move to the next one. So here, this is a funny story, for AI. And in this particular case, I mean, this is definitely possible, but what they are saying is one person applies for roughly 1,000 jobs using AI when he was asleep, and he received 50 interview calls. This is definitely believable. This can be done. And I think we are going to see a lot more use cases. So there is some power to this story. That's why we wanted to discuss. So I'll open up the floor. I think you guys are going to have a lot to talk about.
Well, let me start off, and I'll say that I think it's really smart to use technology to your advantage, for sure. At the end of the day, we're still engaged in people business. So I'm really curious to see how this plays out in terms of how many of these interviews led to offers, what were the types of roles that the person was applying for. Hiring today really is still problematic. And yeah, you might be able to put your CV in front of somebody, but is that really going to be the advantage that you need?
I'm gonna say that it's about time, because I mean it's been probably a decade that the firms that are hiring have been using they've been using a type of artificial intelligence to look at every CV that they get, every resume that comes in, and 99% of them just get thrown out. Kudos to this guy. If I need a job, I'm going to use it, because anybody that's looked for a job has sat there and sent resume after resume after resume, and if it doesn't get through the OCR read, and if it doesn't have the right words and it's not scored properly, they don't even get an interview. So I say about time. And this is funny, because when I read this, I thought, I'm going to go ask ChatGPT I'm going to give them my resume. I'm going to give them a job a CMO job that I could potentially have, and I'm going to have them optimize it. Well, I signed on to LinkedIn to find a job, and LinkedIn already has an optimizer. If you have premium, you can actually optimize your resume to fit a specific job that is being offered using LinkedIn technology. So it's going to be the wave of the future, and somehow we're going to have to bring humans back into it, because I'm not sure that the AI approach will be able to find people the right jobs and find the hiring companies the right people.
Yeah, I agree. This guy deserves kudos. Why not go and try and automate your job hunt? We know it's a painstaking process, and often people that are looking for jobs feel like they're pouring their heart and soul into this process and getting dehumanized through these corporate interactions they have, where they're removed from the resume pile before they even get an interview by some sort of algorithm, right? So perhaps there is some opportunity here, in fact. And as long as the AI is representing this guy's actual skills and not hallucinating that he has a PhD that he doesn't have or something, I don't really see that there's an ethical problem with it. It's just making him more efficient in the jobs that he's able to apply for, allowing him to apply for more jobs more quickly. So that's not a problem. And as long as there's that eventual human interaction, obviously, if you're going to hire a person, you want to meet them before you bring them on board. You're not going to let AI make that decision for you, or at least I won't. I'm just worried that this guy is heightening the expectations of his future employer. In fact, if he tells them that he got the job or he applied for it while he was sleeping, they might start expecting that he's getting work done while he's sleeping. Doesn't matter if he's at his desk or not. They'll say, just automate one of your AI bots to start taking care of work for you.
Yeah, I think the interesting side of the story is really, what does this mean for applicant tracking services and for providers like LinkedIn, HireTool, HireView, people who are in this market, it's an interesting choice because on the one hand, if people are using these technologies more, then you've got more signal to noise ratio, which means that companies need applicant tracking systems more. Yeah. But then on the other hand, there's the risk that if you're using AI, then you're going to be able to game AI systems better. It produces the possibility that some of these vendors might start being able to better discern which applications are mostly or largely produced by AI, but by AI. But then it also suggests maybe there's a business model for these organizations that are providing AI-powered screening could actually move into that other side of the value proposition and start producing solutions that can allow people to apply in a more effective way for more targeted positions, hopefully the ones that they're most familiar to, but which they might not be aware of.
Yeah, great points, guys. So yeah, go ahead.
Sam, a little bit. I got to add in some irony because I saw another article about Anthropic, and Anthropic has all of a ton of jobs available. They're hiring right now, but if you go into the Anthropic site and you try to submit a resume and apply for a job, they ask that you do not use artificial intelligence in any way in the development of your resume or your cover letter or anything or answers to any questions.
That's crazy. You're selling AI and you are not allowing AI for their own jobs. That's not fair.
Add that to the example of dictionary definitions under irony.
Yes.
Exactly. So guys, if you don't have any other comments, we have some comments from the audience. So we have Bala. Hello Bala. Thanks for joining. We'd love to see your comments from your side. If you have anything, Jill, thank you so much for joining. Follow Jill. She has put her LinkedIn profile here. And then we have a question relevant to this story, I guess, from Chad. And Chad is saying that will this improve demand for headhunters as enterprises get inundated with 1,000 of automated resumes? So I'll add something to it, and this is going to be consistent with your comment. I guess Duncan had that comment. So I believe when you look at the AI interaction, there is going to be a little bit of AI to AI interaction or AI agent to AI agent interaction. So in this particular case, this person built the bot or agent, and he has his own agent. But then the other side of the equation from the ATS perspective, I think ATS is the system category that you had mentioned, that you are going to have agents there as well. So this is going to be an interesting mix, I guess, overall, how this is going to shape up. I think it's very early to forecast right now, but we are going to have a lot more of these applications, that we are going to see that are going to be positioned for the candidates as well as for companies.
Yeah, remember, headhunters, they're just collecting more applications, right? Like you're identifying candidates that are good probably, but they're added to that application process. They still have to go through the enterprise hiring queue. So I don't know. I think there's a role for headhunters, especially for highly skilled roles, special talents that are rare to find, looking in channels that you wouldn't normally be able to source people for your job. I don't think that they're necessarily incompatible with this, but will it increase demand? I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I think the big value proposition for headhunters is headhunters reach out to people who aren't on the job market. So people who proactively will apply, they're looking for work, but actually maybe you'd rather employ somebody who isn't looking for work at the moment because they're being very successful in their current role. And you want to try to motivate somebody who's maybe happy where they are, but where you can give them another opportunity. I think that is the powerful use case. But in the long term, I mean, surely headhunters become a smaller part of the pie. They used to be a very big part of it, and now they're just going to be a smaller one. And even as you have more applicants coming in, simply there'll be more automation built into these applicant tracking systems. More automated interviews, more automated calls. Much more filtering and scoring. The automation benefits of this are massive.
But doesn't this just leave us at a point where we kind of have the same problem? Because interview processes these days are long, cumbersome, lots of different participants, different ways of filtering and looking at the data that are being provided by candidates on resumes. We're kind of moving the pile around as opposed to really getting to more of what I would consider what's the essence of trying to identify viable candidates and ensure that we're spending our time with the right people.
Yeah, could not agree more, guys. Great comments. So we have one more comment. If you guys don't have any other comments on that, so I'll read, provide some more context, and then you guys can provide your assessment. So here, Ian is saying that the biggest problem is no consistency in resume format. We need a resume schema that allows for quick processing of content, but without AI interpretation. So in my mind, one of the biggest beauty of generative AI is that you probably don't need a structure, because enforcing a structure is almost like getting into this whole game of change management, which has always been hard. It's very, very, very hard to enforce any sort of change or standardization for that matter. So, now I think the beauty of AI is that you probably don't need that. So that's where the biggest benefit is going to be. But guys, do you have any comment on this?
Yeah, I think what Ian is saying is that if you want to remove the AI bias in your interview interpretation, say if you were able to manage the intake process so that you required your job candidates to fill out a structured form on your website, replacing that sort of unstructured content of a Word document that has the resume, then you could maybe just avoid the need for AI, right? You could use a simpler a system that would be able to analyze each field looking for particular things that you wanted. So there's different ways to go about this. Obviously, generative AI does open up the ability to analyze the unstructured documents too, but we know that there was analysis of job candidates before AI existed.
More comments? So guys, one joke on this, I guess. I mean, EDI was probably one of the most hated technology out there, which is sort of trying to promote the standard. And now we are talking about creating standards for resume. So we'll see how that goes, I guess. So if you don't have anything else on this, we have one more comment related to this story. So Anders is saying perhaps expanding the V card standard to V resume as a standard format would streamline things, perhaps reducing the need for AI parsing. Guys, I'm not liking this conversation at all, to be completely honest, because if this were for me, meaning you are looking at 20 pages of resume, you are going to give me like one page, it's not going to work for me. So I don't know how.
And I think you have to think about the use case for a resume. That surely any smart job applicant is constructing their resume a little bit differently for this job than for that job. They're removing the things that the role doesn't ask for. They're putting more emphasis on the things that the role does ask for. I think the other thing that's missing from all of this, and maybe this is where headhunters is cultural fit. Definitely AI makes it much easier both for candidates who are ill-intentioned to pretend to be more qualified than they are, but it also allows systems to be able to more quickly identify people who have the right skills. But in so many organizations, really they should be hiring as much for attitude, as much for cultural fit as for skills. And I think sometimes these automated systems give you a false sense of security that an applicant will be a good fit. Also by the fashion for competency related interviews. Maybe that human element is essential if you want to be able to find people who you're going to be able to retain and grow for the long term.
Well, I think that's a huge opportunity to be able to look at psychographics, right? Not just demographics and experience, just even to be able to look at, some of these personality tests, whether it's Myers-Briggs or StrengthsFinder or whatever it is, because I think we can use technology going forward to expand the number of things that we look at. A resume is very limited. And if we understand the dynamics around personality types and strengths within a specific organization that person is going to work in, and they have a model, you can, as a hiring manager, I look at those kinds of things to see, are they going to be a fit, not just with the culture of the company, but are they going to be a fit on my team? And so I think there is a huge opportunity to expand beyond, V-resume can be a component of it, but to get into psychographics, to look at things like values, to see if there's a match with culture. I think there's a huge opportunity to automate hiring by looking at additional attributes within the process.
Okay, if you don't have any other comments, move the comment as well. Fully okay. So this is a very interesting story, and I believe John is probably going to have a lot of comments here. I don't know if anybody else is AI here, but this is the LLM versus LQM, and probably we can expect 1 hour lecture from Professor John on this. What that is supposed to be. So this is the funding news story as well. 3 million, not 300 million. 3 million is nothing for this technology, I guess. So we are looking at $300 million, funding. But in my mind, I think this is all very hot. And now the enterprise use cases for the generative AI technology is going to be far superior, I believe, is probably the term. Right now, what we have seen is just the consumer-centric application so far. So we will see what we'll get out of it. So, open for you guys for comment, guys.
Yeah, I'll jump in first of all and say that it's a fantastic opportunity because it is a quantitative models, and the solution areas are far different, and they're everybody gets excited about large language models, but it really is just the language. It doesn't do any reasoning. There's not a lot of data. The LLM and generative AI doesn't do any real analysis. It doesn't have a compute engine. So by developing these large quantitative models that are specific to solution areas like drug discovery, like financial analysis, like risk analysis, these guys are in a hot spot. This brings their funding, by the way, to $825 million. They launched in early 2016. Had a $25 million round. They had a $500 million round. So this is now ideally going to promote them into some serious growth. They've got a strong customer base. I think this is a company to watch. This is absolutely a company to watch. All of the hype goes to the Gen AI stuff, and we should be aware of that. But SandboxAQ is a company to watch.
Yeah, I'll double down on what John is saying here. I learned of SandboxAQ last year when I attended a webinar that was put on by the chief engineer of the firm, and he was talking about not large quantitative models. So this did end up coming up, but he was talking about applications for quantum sensing, which is a whole other area of emerging technology that this company is also facilitating, and LQMs are enabling this whole other area of diagnostic devices that might be useful in the medical field and in other fields. And it was very compelling to me. And it really feels like they're positioned to own this area, this concept of LQMs. And you just look at the investors involved. You've got Eric Schmidt as your company chairman here, Mark Benioff backing you. And then I'm looking out at what other firms are actually involved in large quantitative models right now. With most of the AI leaders we think of today focused on LLMs. Well, the ones that are building LQMs, aside from SandboxAQ, Renaissance Technologies, World Quant, they're focused on this algorithmic trading, right? So they're building for financial portfolio management. And SandboxAQ is looking at much broader use cases that could transform biopharma, chemistry, materials discovery. So this is an exciting company to keep an eye on.
Yeah, just to chip in on that. I mean, I agree that everything around drug discovery and materials science can be massively accelerated by quantum computing. I'd also point to AI-powered cybersecurity as a hugely important area for this. We're seeing, not only recently, but really in the last 3 years, 4 years even, we're seeing generative security threats having massive implications for organizations, not all of which they're speaking about openly, but the computing power of quantum computing produces a vast range of new threat vectors for organizations, and it's absolutely right that we should be trying to use these sorts of technologies, really betting that we can use AI to plug that gap in cybersecurity that many organizations are starting to suffer from.
Sam,
muted.
you're on mute.
Sorry, that's why I don't like mute. I told you before as well. Okay, so I'll go back and repeat. So this was a question for you, Brian. On your comment related to this industry, SandboxAQ is probably the only player which is going to be slightly more, I like to call this horizontal platform, as opposed to vertical application, right? So number one, do you believe that they are going to be as hot as OpenAI in terms of the valuation, in terms of their popularity, I guess? Do you think more competitors are going to move to the space, or is SandboxAQ going to be gold standard for large quantitative models?
Yeah, it has that potential to be set the gold standard for large quantitative models. What really drove the explosion of interest in OpenAI was ChatGPT, right? Now, is there some sort of ChatGPT opportunity for SandboxAQ? That I'm less certain about. People have, everybody uses language, right? Everybody writes. Everybody wants to look up information that's embedded in that large language model that's trained on everything on the internet and then some. So there's a lot of common use cases that everybody could relate to, and it's sort of like was able to enter into the public consciousness in that way. Does a large quantitative model that's of equal power and size, does it have some sort of application that everybody can relate to and use? I'm not sure about that, right? It might be more about solving very complex, data heavy, quantitative problems, of course. So, the value is going to be there in the enterprise. It's not going to explode on the consumer scene as much. And what does that mean in terms of like the value of SandboxAQ?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, so very interesting. So some more questions, I guess, there, clarifying questions. For OpenAI, I guess the biggest backer for them was Microsoft. And then you had the competitive technology as well. Google has, access to that. Everybody else is sort of working on that because their market share was primarily consumer-centric. So in this case, obviously, I can see why Mark Benioff is involved here, because this is going to be slightly more industrial use cases. Do you see any other companies that might be backing up SandboxAQ?
Backing them up in terms of investing in them, Sam?
Yeah, and my understanding is going to be that, Microsoft is backing OpenAI because either they are going to acquire or take advantage, or they need to have some sort of influence on that technology, right? That's why you would back. So here, do you think any major enterprise software vendors, SAPs of the world, they are going to back SandboxAQ?
Yeah, I could imagine. I could imagine the tech giants all being interested.
Yeah. And I think they already have money from Google and Nvidia, as well as from more traditional SoftBank, Rare Capital. The application areas are really interesting because if they're able to identify powerful use cases, if you think about it, like take something like drug discovery. Actually, the number of organizations that are intensively engaged in drug discovery is relatively compact. You could make a massive impact on a small number of firms, actually without needing to build out an extensive consumer brand or a very, very large sales force. You think of what Palantir has been able to do, acquiring a massive customer base, but actually, or a lot of revenue, and quite a great valuation, but actually from a relatively compact number of customers.
Great points, guys. If you guys don't have any more comments, I can move to the next story. Okay. All right. So this is a very interesting story as well, coming from Salesforce, and we have provided a lot of coverage for Salesforce. Salesforce, Microsoft rivalry is very common in terms of, what is AI agent, I guess. They are arguing about that. So in this particular case, this is coming from Salesforce, and they are saying that they have announced Agentforce 2.0. I don't know what is the difference between 1.0, 2.0, but obviously it is going to be far more powerful. At least that's what I can read based on what Salesforce is trying to claim. And they are saying that the newest version of Agentforce, the first digital labor platform for enterprises, a complete AI system for augmenting teams with trusted autonomous AI agents in the flow of work. So, this is AI agents, and they have been the biggest champions of AI agents, I guess. So I don't know. So you guys are probably going to have more comments here. So I'll open up the floor.
This was announced at Dreamforce back in December. And now we're getting the general release of Agentforce 2.0 in February. I was surprised to learn in this announcement, Salesforce saying that it's processed 2 trillion transactions on the platform for enterprises. So what constitutes a transaction exactly when you're talking about, these sort of task-based agents is a little bit unclear to me, but it still sounds like a high number, and I think reflects pretty good adoption. And I think this is a really clever way to pursue AI agents in the enterprise. Instead of sort of positioning it as go build your own agents on our platform, we've given you the natural language programming skills to go and do it. It's actually just identifying the most common tasks that enterprises are doing over and over in many different scenarios, and giving them that tool, right? And saying, this is the automation you need. Here's the ability to customize it. Go and apply it now. This is going to help enterprises solve that ROI problem they have with their AI investment. We all got Copilot and turned it on, right? And it got integrated into little sidebars in our software. Do we ever use it when we're actually working? Not very often, right? Or else maybe ask it a question or get it to review some text, but it's not doing very many tasks for us. And when you try and get it to do some tasks, it doesn't work very well. So we needed agents to really get there and add that automation aspect to get a productivity boost. So if Agentforce can manage this, it's a big win for Salesforce.
I'm gonna say that Agentforce 2.0 is agentic AI 0.5. So in the agentic world, there, an AI agent is basically a piece of software that has enough intelligence to be able to reason, to be able to learn, to be able to adapt, to be able to act, to be able to interact. And ultimately, it needs to happen in multi-agent environments where agents can collaborate together and have a handshake and be able to come up with new objectives. And this is really agentic AI 0.5. It's only tasks. It's still very simple tasks. When they talk about reasoning, it's very simple reasoning. It's really almost like generative AI based, 100% generative AI based. And their Atlas reasoning engine is moving the right direction, but it doesn't have any ability to act, to interact, to collaborate with other agents. I think that they have a long ways to go, but they're on the right track. And the task-oriented AI agents need to move and mature into persona-based agents that do what a person would do, and then from there to department-based agents, and from there into ecosystem agents that look at entire ecosystems, like not just software code generation, but software engineering, the whole process. So it's the right direction. It's not 2.0. They need to pull back their marketing maybe a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I like that thinking that it's maybe getting a little bit ahead of themselves, and I think that businesses that take the messaging from Mark Benioff and believe that these are digital employees ready to do labor for you will be disappointed, and I think it could lead to bad outcomes, especially when you start talking about automatically bringing prospects along that pipeline. Right, I think there's a lot of risk that some companies will be engaging in outreach and engaging with prospects in a way that feels really spammy. So let's hope they keep the humans in the loop and use this as sort of augmenting the sales process, with coaching, with advice, with bringing in relevant information at the right time, rather than just letting the agent go and spam everybody on LinkedIn with, hey, come and buy my product.
Yeah, if I could just chip in, I mean, I actually am a big fan of having more dumb models that can do very few things. Obviously, we also need complex models. If you think of what Sam was talking about, having AI that can augment the human, I mean, obviously that is what we would love. But actually, particularly looking in manufacturing, also in telecommunications, I think it's pretty amazing to see how relatively simple and robust models, relatively straightforward agents can do a lot of heavy lifting, maybe not client-facing heavy lifting. There's a lot of back office activities. There's a lot of routine customer service activities that can be automated, surprisingly well with models that are quite lean, quite compact, and therefore have relatively low operating costs. You look at the difference in the transactional costs that people have to pay. Obviously, the cost of using LLMs, the cost of using highly powered agents is going to come down very rapidly over time. But at the moment, I think we're at the stage where there are a whole series of routine tasks where agents are a serious alternative to offshoring, right? Maybe they're not going to displace people who are in customer facing roles, but there's a lot of entry level routine work that we need to be doing. And UiPath and ServiceNow and other organizations are pushing very, very similar automation strategy. And though we all have the appetite that these would be as good as humans, I think we have to remember it doesn't have to be as good as a human to be able to save a lot of money and dramatically accelerate a whole series of customer service scenarios.
Yeah, so one layer I guess I would like to add here that I don't think have been touched overall in terms of the use cases. So initially, when we were looking at any sort of Agentech AI or generative AI use case, we were looking at maybe content creation, content generation. Then customer service, I think that was the most spoken use cases. And then now this story says sales. So now we are getting serious, and I have seen some other startups as well doing a lot more sales scenarios, which is a very exciting sign that is probably expanding. So I don't know if you guys are going to have any comments on that, if you have seen any other technologies, companies that might be working on sales side of things as well.
I mean, definitely in almost all, major organizations, we're seeing a lot more AI enhancement of what customer success managers and salespeople are doing. But a lot of that is like listening to the calls, giving nudges to the humans. A lot of that is augmenting the human. There definitely is a lot that you can automate. And goodness me, my LinkedIn inbox is full of people who are telling me how they can automate selling through LinkedIn. But I think it's really the enhancement of human salespeople where we're seeing AI really being able to dramatically change the productivity of sales forces at the moment.
Okay, if you don't have any other comments, we can probably do one more story. Depending upon how many comments we get, I guess we'll keep maybe for 2-3 minutes for any sort of closing advice. But maybe we have 5 minutes right now for this. So I'll provide quick overview on this one. This is Grammarly acquiring Coda. And this is a very interesting story. A couple of layers that I personally found interesting is because, Coda CEO is becoming Grammarly CEO, which is always very interesting when you acquire any company and then they sort of take over. But in this case, I think he does have very strong background. And I think some people, or at least on LinkedIn, they were discussing the future of Grammarly and a lot of technologies that are going to be very similar to your ChatGPT. So what is going to happen to them? What is going to happen to Grammarly business model? I think the direction that they are taking is interesting. It's very interesting. So I don't know if you guys are going to have any comments.
I mean, I'm completely in love with this, and a lot of what Coda is doing is very similar to what some of my colleagues are using with Flowwise. I think being able to articulate and drive workflow in every copy-related activity is so important. Imagine if you're working for a multinational organization where you're changing documents, and those have to be, kind of rippled through in a whole series of different languages. If you think about having workflows where you're able to ingest, conversations, recordings, emails, produce, a whole series of content items out of that. The opportunity to really build on Coda strengths, which have really been with structured documents, wikis, workflow automation, and then put more AI-driven content generation, which obviously Grammarly knows about. I think that's a fantastic partnership. And the interesting thing is, what does that mean for Grammarly as it moves into the enterprise sales space? Does that mean it gets bought by an enterprise software company? Or does that mean it needs to change the way in which it's working to have a stronger enterprise go-to-market?
I read this as Grammarly trying to position itself for a more lucrative acquisition because it doesn't have that much enterprise market penetration, and there's frankly a lot of products that it competes with in this sort of content marketing space, I guess, or maybe you're just thinking it's more of a general productivity tool. Anyone can benefit from it, what it offers, but still, it's more of a point solution right now. Obviously, but with this Coda acquisition, they're saying that they're going to enter into the space of AI agents, but doesn't really have that much credibility to be a platform for AI agents, given that it just doesn't have that central position as a platform that's used by enterprises to get a lot of different processes done right now. And it just doesn't have the reach to really get the Coda platform in front of that many eyeballs. So, is this an attempt to sort of package together two interesting and great tools into something that would be acquired by a bigger firm?
Yeah,
I can certainly say that I really love Grammarly as a product. As an individual user, I've used it both in an individual context as well as in a corporate context, and I was actually pretty excited to see this. And I think that you're gaining visibility into potential adoption in a corporate context by individuals doing and using the products. So the thing I'm really concerned about is what's this going to do to the cost of being able to use the capability, and that's just from my perspective.
Yeah, I think it's a really wise move by Grammarly, because how many companies have we seen try to move from more of a consumer-based sale to a enterprise-based sale and fail miserably? It's an extremely difficult switch to make. And by acquiring Coda and even admitting that they need a CEO who lives and breathes enterprise sales and understands enterprises and enterprise customers, I think it's an incredibly smart move. And I think perhaps the greatest opportunity in the merger is around the new release of Coda Brain, which has opens tremendous doors for any company that has a knowledge base that is their core IP. Consulting firms, large consulting firms, have an amazing amount of knowledge. Industry analyst firms, guys, come on, they have an amazing set of knowledge that they need to be able to surface and make available. And these companies don't have that today. They're probably trying to build it. I know that I've talked to a couple of services companies, large consulting firms that are building them themselves. This could be a real opportunity. And then with Grammarly, anything that goes into the knowledge base, is already tagged, it's already corrected, it's already understood. And if you can pass that metadata on to the Coda system, there's a lot that can be done to increase the value of a knowledge base that a company has.
All right, guys. So I think we are close to our time right now. So we just have 1 minute and we need to do super quick closing advice. I don't know if you guys are going to have hard stop. We want to be respectful of your time. So just one word closing advice maybe, and any sort of plug. I'll go anti-clockwise this time. Duncan, you want to go first?
Not really, but in a nutshell, I think it's all about whether AI is enhancing the human or whether it's displacing the. I think that's a really important choice for almost every software company developing a solution in this space.
Perfect. Brian?
Humans provide judgment. AI provides prediction. Make sure you understand whether the task you're assigning AI requires human judgment or not.
Kingo?
So as opposed to thinking about things, AI at the dashboard level or at a discrete product, let's start like the systems level. Let's start thinking about how we can use this at the subsystem level and how all this stuff work to provide more visibility and insight.
I'd say don't be afraid of the AI agents. They can be an assistant to you in your work as well as an extension of the work that you do. So let them be your friend. And John Santaferraro, by the way, shameless plug, Ferraro Consulting. We do 50% marketing strategy and 50% industry analyst services. So check me out. Connect with me on LinkedIn.
There's no shame in plug. Thank you so much, guys. I love you all. And just for a wrap for this show, if you joined for the first time, this was part of our Analysts Gone Wild. So make sure you guys are going to be here next week. We are going to come back with juiciest stories, from the next segment. On that note, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in today.
Thanks.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.